promoting a healthy environment. It's the air we breathe. Clean, safe water. Responsible management of our natural resources. We protect and restore for a sustainable future. Environment matters.
This is not easy work. It's often an uphill battle, lots of hurdles. A lot of it was innovative stuff, having to work from train tracks, bring all the materials and all the equipment in on train track.
All aboard, highlighting a stream restoration project only accessible by rail. We'll take a ride aboard the Cheat Mountain Salamander. Plus,
so it makes us feel proud as a community that we are looking to the green side and we're looking to, to support the environment and move forward in a very positive way.
It might look like a beautification project, but this garden in downtown Fairmont is helping to reduce one of the biggest contributors to water pollution. Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Environment Matters. I'm Greg Adolphson.
and I'm Kelly Gillenwater. When it rains, it pours.
And when it pours, the water that runs off can gather all kinds of things like oil, excess fertilizer, bacteria, and dirt and head straight to the nearest storm drain.
It's a particular problem in cities where there's a high concentration of streets, sidewalks, and roofs. But now one community is using green infrastructure to help deal with the problem. The DEP's Jake Lance joins us now with a project that's helping Fairmont meet its environmental goals.
Greg and Kelly, it's called green infrastructure, and it's a more cost-effective, resilient approach to dealing with stormwater. Rather than conventional drains and pipes to carry the excess water off, green infrastructure treats stormwater at its source. With its hilly streets, sidewalks, and sloped parking lots, from a drainage perspective, the city of Fairmont is shaped a lot like a funnel. And like most cities, there aren't a lot of places for all that water to go, except into the storm drains. So, how to reduce that? For the Fairmont Utility Department, the answer was rain gardens. When the vacant building that occupied this site was demolished, the city repurposed it as an additional parking lot for City Hall. But this is no ordinary parking lot.
Once the rainfall hits the impervious area, it sheet flows across and it is guided through the back into the rain garden itself. The plants utilize it, and every good rain garden design has to have an overflow. If you get the real, 25, 30, 50-year storms, the rain garden can flood. So you have to have an overflow point.
Rain gardens work by slowing, absorbing, and filtering the excess stormwater runoff. This is one of 4 rain gardens in Fairmont that were installed last year.
As you can see, after a pretty harsh winter, most of the plants have came up and the foliage is beautiful. We're waiting for most of them to bloom. We're meeting with the landscaper to identify some that obviously didn't come up. That was part of the contract that he'll replace. But I'd say at this point, and from observing this rain garden through small rain events, larger rain events, it's really worked to the benefit of the environment, and it works hard each and every day for it.
As for the types of plants that work best in rain gardens, it varies by location.
We research, first of all, your topography and your area of West Virginia and what plants are the best that uptake as much moisture as possible. And then we got with some designers that had some experience with rain gardens and was able to come to us and say, these are probably the best types of plants to go in the rain garden. Uptake the most, utilize most of the water, purify the water, and the same with the foliage in the way of the trees. So we've kind of had a ability, and then how many is maybe native of West Virginia and that is utilized in a lot of the types of horticultural and agricultural type projects within the state of West Virginia.
And besides reducing runoff amounts, the rain gardens give the city a chance to promote a message of environmentalism.
The way that we've designed it also is we've got some signage that's going to be included so folks can come up, take a look at not only the garden, but understand the environmental benefits of green infrastructure and what it can do for not only our community, but us as a utility and as a city moving forward to be a green city and to meet all the environmental compliance issues that we have.
The City of Fairmont was recently honored for its stormwater management efforts, receiving a 2016 Environmental Award from the DEP in May. Rain gardens are actually pretty easy to incorporate into the landscape and are something individual homeowners can do to help reduce water pollution. There's all sorts of information on design and plant selection available online. For Environment Matters, I'm Jake Glantz.
Thanks, Jake. The DEP also uses green infrastructure here at our Charleston headquarters, where a rain garden installed several years ago helps absorb some of the runoff from our parking lots. For most folks, the problem of stormwater runoff is one that's out of sight, out of mind.
After all, where does all that water go after it goes down the storm drain?
Some middle school students are answering that question with art. The DEP's Brianna Hickman joins us now with that story.
It started with a project to bring awareness to how water pollution can be prevented. But for the students at Moorfield Middle School, it became a lesson in how their individual actions can bring about a positive change. You'll find them on about 50 storm drains around downtown Moorfield, and they convey a powerful message.
My design was that it was a fish and it was swimming, and I think there was 2 fishes, and one of them said, this is my home, not your trash bin.
7th grader Lisa Barr had the winning design. She says she thinks her design for the project will open people's eyes.
Yes, I do, because it will show them what they're doing to the animals' habitat and where they live. And my goal for this project is to make people aware of what they're doing to the animals and where they live, and to make them stop completely.
Lisa's teacher wasn't sure there would be that much interest in her class for the project when she was first approached by the West Virginia Conservation Agency.
And at first I was like, well, I don't know if my kids would want to do it. And then as I got looking where we were going to be at during the time she wanted to do it, I said, actually, that'll work perfect, because that's about the time we'll be starting into our reduce, reuse, recycle unit. I said, perfect, sure, we'll do it. And I was surprised at the amount of kids. I told them about it and instantly, oh, I want to do it, I want to do it. I have an idea. I had kids that wanted to turn in 2 or 3 of them because they really were excited about it after learning how they could affect what happens in such, a drastic way. And they said, I really want to get involved. I want to do it.
Some, like runner-up Remington Funkhauser, had a more straightforward approach to the contest.
Because I like drawing, and I don't want people dumping in the rivers because I don't want them to kill all the fish, because I like to go fishing.
What goes down the storm drains in Moorfield ends up here, in the south branch of the Potomac River and ultimately the Chesapeake Bay. But whatever the motivation, their teacher says it was a great educational opportunity and a chance to broaden the students' horizons.
I think so, because I think a lot of them, especially since we're such a small town, they don't realize that the choices that they make don't affect just their life or just Moorfield. Choices that they make affect the rest of their life, affect others' lives, and really can affect our whole state, our whole country, just by throwing trash out.
The signs have been in place for about a year now, and Hillary Plum says her students still get excited when they see their signs. Marcus Dyke was the other runner-up. For Environment Matters, I'm Brianna Hickman.
Thanks, Brianna. The project was funded by the Chesapeake Bay Program. For DEP Cabinet Secretary Randy Huffman, fishing is more than just a hobby.
Secretary Huffman joins Deputy Secretary and Director of the DEP's Division of Water and Waste Management, Scott Mandarola, for a fishing trip on the Kanawha and a conversation about the importance of clean water to the state's economy.
Hi, my name's Randy Huffman. I'm the Cabinet Secretary for the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection. I'm here on the Kanawha River today with Scott Mandarola. Scott is the agency's Deputy Cabinet Secretary and its Director of the Water Division. One of the things that a lot of people may not realize is the best way to measure the health of the stream or the health of the water body, whatever it is to measure the amount of life that's in it, the aquatic life, all the way from the microinvertebrates, the bugs, the crayfish, up to the fish species that inhabit the river. I've lived within miles of the Kanawha River my entire life, and it's not always been as clean as it is today. A lot of people don't realize how many different species of fish there are in the river. and how abundant they are. And that's a testimony to the efforts of a lot of people and the Clean Water Act over the past few decades in cleaning our rivers up. Was that on a
swim bait?
Swim bait? Good.
It's a sauger. Or no, it's a walleye.
That's a walleye.
Well, he took it too.
That's really neat because walleyes are one of the most pollution intolerant species there are. When you see them in the water, you know you got some.
The water's famous for walleye are mostly clear, clean lakes up in Michigan and up in the northern part of the country. They like cold water, but they like clean water. Is the most important thing with walleye. We've got some video from back during the 50s and 60s, showed some of the outfalls along the Kanawha River, and it would not even be recognizable in comparison to what you're looking at today. The outfalls prior to the Clean Water Act were relatively unregulated. Industry dumped their waste products into the river pretty much, again, unregulated, without too much concern for the river itself. Now, the discharges, as we see some of these along the river now, are completely regulated with NPDES permits that are required to meet water quality standards. For just 2 years ago, the legislature passed a provision in the water quality standard to allow the first 72 miles of the Kanawha River to be used as a drinking water source again, if some community along it so chose. Prior to that, with the inception of the Clean Water Act and when the standards first came into play, the first 72 miles of the Kanawha River really didn't support the use as a drinking water source because of the discharges and the level of pollution in the river at that time. But that has changed so dramatically that at this point in time, the river both below and above that 72-mile mark is more than sufficient quality to be used as a drinking water source.
There's a really nice fish. That's a really good fish. That's a quality smallmouth. We'll get him in the boat with that loose net. That's what it's all about. That's a really nice fish. He's healthy. He's clean. They're up in here getting ready to spawn. They're doing what they're doing, and that's why we do it. You know, I've been fishing competitively, tournament fishing for bass on this river for over 20 years, and it's amazing the number and quality of fish that it just continues to produce. And there's a lot of fishing pressure on it. You know, we don't have a lot of big water in West Virginia like they do down south. You know, we don't have the 25,000, 30,000, 50,000 acre lakes. We have some small rivers and we have our 1,500, 2,000 acre lakes. So a lot of people want to fish. It's an important resource. It's an important part of our economy, and but we're limited. So we have to take care of it. We have to manage it right, and water quality is that's the name of the game. In order to support the level of fisheries that we need, we've got to have good water quality. What is really goes unspoken, not talked about very much, is that how much that resource contributes to our state's economy, and most importantly, the potential it has to do even more when it's managed correctly. Whenever I go to one of my fishing tournaments here, we have them in Charleston all the time. There could be 60 to 100 boats participating at any time in one of these tournaments, and these guys spend a lot of money. They all have expensive trucks and they have expensive boats, and when you go into a parking lot on a Saturday morning and you look out there and you see $1 million or $1.5 million worth of boat and truck sitting in a parking lot, you then begin to understand that connection and the potential that exists between water quality and economic development. People are not going to spend that kind of money if there's no fish to catch, and that's what it boils down to. And that provides a lot of opportunity. And when you're talking about a state where sometimes opportunity is limited because of the terrain and the infrastructure and other things, this is a great resource.
The river, the Kanawha River, isn't just rejuvenated because a lot of business has moved out of the valley. That's really not it. It's the ability to treat and regulate water and discharges to the point where they can coexist. You can have industry on a river and you can have recreational uses on a river. They do not need to be mutually exclusive. The Ohio River is a great example of that because, you know, the Ohio River is also a very unique fishery with a huge diversity of fish, and it's still one of the most industrialized rivers on the East Coast.
I think what's important, and the point that we're really trying to make here, is that there's a connection, a strong connection between water quality and an economy. In this case, our state's economy is what we're specifically talking about. High water quality leads to an increased usage of the resource, whether that be for industry or for recreational purposes, both of which contribute to the economy. So I think when we're talking about water quality, we're talking about the ability of the water to sustain life, not just us, not just human life, but also aquatic life. And that aquatic life leads to a increased fishing, increased recreational use, and that leads to dollars being spent. So I think that nexus is huge. There's a tremendous opportunity for us to continue in this state to capitalize on that. Again, from a recreational standpoint, which is very important. It has to do with quality of life. It also contributes real dollars to the economy, but also, and very importantly, for the increased opportunities that exist for good jobs with a strong industrial base. And a strong industrial base does not want weaker water quality standards. They want stronger water quality standards because that protects the water that they need also for their business.
According to the most recent data from the U.S. Census Bureau, fishing activity in West Virginia generated over $420 million spent, an average of nearly $1,400 spent per angler. West Virginia is home to more than 800 tourism businesses selling fishing and outdoor equipment that employ over 2,800 people. When you add in boating, paddling, and whitewater rafting, the totals climb even higher. Visitors to the New River Gorge, just to give you one example, generated $47 million in tourism revenue in 2014 alone. Spreading the news about restoration efforts along the Shavers Fork River was the idea behind a special trip recently of the Durbin and Greenbrier Valley Railroad's train, the Cheat Mountain Salamander.
The day-long trip began in Elkins and traveled all the way to the former town of Spruce. We boarded the train at Cheat Bridge. For train buffs, a trip on the Cheat Mountain Salamander is a journey through the past, with its 1950s vintage locomotives and passenger cars. But today's train ride is also a look into the future. The trip was organized by the Canaan Valley Institute to show off some of the environmental restoration efforts visible from the tracks.
The Upper Shavers Fork has a long history of logging and mining activity and also road building, which really alter the watershed. So we notice as we move up and down the river on the train that there isn't really a very thick riparian corridor right along the river. There used to be. Those big trees normally would fall in the river and create all sorts of nice riffles and pools that would provide great habitat for trout. They're not there anymore. There isn't that kind of habitat. That's what a lot of this work has been meant to restore. Some of the other impact has been acid mine drainage and acid precipitation in the upper watershed. And so DNR has remedied that by creating some fine limestone dump sites in little tributaries that go into the river that then provide some treatment, buffer the acid in the drainage and the precipitation as it moves into the river, and improves water quality for fish there.
The trip featured talks from naturalists, foresters, and restoration experts, explaining some of the ins and outs of the various projects. Organizers say putting all the work into context helps visitors understand the complexities of stream restoration.
I think this trip really does help. It's great for people to see and have these things interpreted for them by the experts who help build these things. And so yeah, it's a real educational opportunity for the general public, as well as for some of our friends in the agencies themselves who hear about these projects but don't get to see them, or work on some of them but not all of them. And I'd really like to see more outreach and education about the value of this work. It's a great place to do that because so many people love the area, and I just think we need to build more public support for this kind of restoration work.
The Cheat Mountain Salamander makes the run from Elkins and Cheat Bridge to Spruce several days a week from May until the end of October. For a complete schedule and booking information, you can check out the website, mountainrailwv.com.
As we've seen, stream restoration projects generally involve a lot of different groups, and that's especially important when the proposed project is on private land.
And getting landowner cooperation is just the first step in a long, involved process. The DEP's Mike Huff visited a recently completed project near Martinsburg.
100 years ago, this was an orchard. Today, the fruit trees are gone, replaced with a housing development. A dam built across Tuscarora Creek in 1911 to provide a source of irrigation for the orchard was no longer needed and was causing a series of environmental impacts along the creek.
We did some investigation of the benthic community and found that the soils, the sediment that was collecting along the stream bed was really not allowing for the benthic community to become established. So the critters that like to live on the bottom really were not doing very well. So it was a pretty big problem.
But project managers determined that removing the dam would create problems of its own, not the least of which was remobilizing all of that built-up sediment trapped behind the dam. So they did the next best thing. They moved the stream.
Basically, we've reestablished about 800 linear feet of stream. We were confined by the pond here that the community here uses as a fire suppression. We wanted to realign through the bridge that we crossed over because it was very tortuous. And basically we bypassed and realigned the stream to the left of the dam. And the dam is actually still there on the right. It's just been buried.
Stream restoration is as much of an art as it is a science, and this stretch of Tuscarora Creek was no exception.
We'll look at photography or what actually exists and get an idea of what kind of pattern the stream used to have. And we basically tried to reestablish what was there before it was impacted historically. We'll do cross sections, kind of base our design off the drainage area and build to the right cross section so that it's able to carry the right storm. And we're looking to develop pools and develop riffles for habitat and just reestablish the natural function of the stream.
And by doing that, erosion rates are reduced. Crews also planted trees and other vegetation to help stabilize the banks. Things like red and white oaks, basswood, box elder, willows, and alder. As they grow and mature, the trees will provide shade and cover and help cool the water, essential ingredients for a healthy trout population. As with many of these stream restoration projects, this one is on private land, so getting property owner buy-in early in the process is important.
We're really grateful that the landowners were willing to allow this to happen, and they've been very cooperative and helpful, and they've been good stewards of the trees that were planted here during past projects, and we are sure they will continue to be a good steward of this project.
In Berkeley County, I'm Mike Huff for Environment Matters.
The group worked to remove a similar dam recently in Maryland and is working with Fish and Wildlife to remove 3 larger dams near Clarksburg.
We leave you now along the Shavers Fork, back aboard the Cheat Mountain Salamander as it travels through Randolph and Pocahontas counties.
On behalf of all of us at the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection, thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time.
More than 800 people with one mission, promoting a healthy environment. We are the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection.